The banquet hall reeked of power and desperation, a sickly sweet combination of expensive wine, roasted meat, and the anxiety that clung to every unmated wolf in the room. I stood near the back wall, half hidden behind a marble column, watching the spectacle unfold with the detached fascination of someone who knew they didn't belong here. The Alpha Gathering happened once every 3 years, a grand political theater where alliances were forged, treaties signed, and, if the whispers were true, where King Damien Ashford surveyed the eligible females of the realm like a farmer inspecting livestock. Not that he'd chosen anyone, not in 3 years. Not since his mate had died. I shouldn't have been here at all. My pack, the Silverwood, occupied the lowest rung of the hierarchy, a collection of farmers, craftsmen, and laborers scattered across the northern frontier. We were the wolves that other wolves forgot existed until they needed someone to blame for border disputes or crop failures. My alpha, Thomas Garrett, had brought 5 of us to the capital, 3 promising young males to show strength, and 2 females to, well, I still wasn't entirely sure why Claire and I had been included. Claire was beautiful, confident, daughter of our pack's beta. She belonged here. I was insurance, a body to fill space. The great chandeliers cast golden light across the assembly, illuminating hundreds of wolves dressed in their finest, silks and velvets in every color, jewels that caught the light like captured stars, faces painted with practiced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The air hummed with barely contained energy. All those dominant wolves in one space, their power pressing against each other like invisible hands testing for weakness. I tugged at the neckline of my borrowed dress, a simple cream-colored thing that Claire's mother had deemed appropriate for someone of your station. The fabric felt wrong against my skin, too fine, too visible. My hair, pale blonde, almost white in certain light, had been pinned up in an elaborate style that one of the pack's elder women had insisted upon. At least try to look presentable, she'd said, her fingers rough as she'd pulled and twisted. You're representing Silverwood, even if you're just there to make up numbers. Just there to make up numbers. The phrase had followed me my entire life. My parents had died when I was 7. A rogue attack that had decimated half our border patrol. I'd survived by hiding in a root cellar, pressed against the earthen walls for 16 hours, listening to the screams above. When they'd finally found me, I hadn't spoken for 2 months. Even now, 19 years later, I could still smell that cellar, damp earth, rotting vegetables, my own fear sweat soaking through my clothes. The pack had raised me out of obligation, not love. I'd grown up quiet, useful, invisible, good at mending, decent at cooking, excellent at disappearing when dominant wolves needed space to establish hierarchy. I'd never shifted with the ease of other wolves. My transformation was slow, painful, incomplete. Some whispered that the trauma had broken something fundamental in me. Others simply didn't whisper about me at all. A trumpet blast pulled me from my thoughts. The room fell silent with the swift totality of prey animals sensing a predator. Every head turned toward the main entrance, where 2 massive oak doors were swinging open. He entered like winter itself, cold, inevitable, beautiful in the way that dangerous things are beautiful. King Damien Ashford stood at least 6.5 feet tall, his frame powerful even in the formal black suit that looked like it had been designed specifically to make other males feel inadequate. Dark hair, longer than fashion dictated, fell across a face that could have been carved from granite, all sharp angles and harsh planes, with eyes so pale they looked almost silver in the chandelier light. He moved with the fluid grace of a born predator, each step controlled, economical. But it was the aura that truly marked him. Power radiated from him in waves so thick I could taste it on my tongue, metal and ice and something wild that made my wolf whimper and press low in my mind. This wasn't just dominance. This was the absolute certainty of a creature that had never, not once, encountered anything it couldn't kill. 3 years, the rumors said. 3 years since his mate Cassandra had died in a fire that consumed the eastern wing of the palace. 3 years since he'd touched a woman, spoken more than necessary, or shown any emotion beyond cold calculation. He ruled with efficient brutality, his council complained. He'd become a machine, they whispered, all the humanity burned out of him along with his mate. Looking at him now, I believed every word. He surveyed the room with those unsettling pale eyes, his expression utterly neutral. Behind him walked his inner circle, Beta Jackson, a scarred brute with kind eyes, Gamma Nathaniel, beautiful and deadly as a blade, and Commander Sarah, one of the few females to hold military rank, her face hard as flint. They arranged themselves behind their king like chess pieces, powerful, but secondary. Alpha Thomas stepped forward from our delegation, his chest puffed out, voice booming. "Your Majesty, the Silverwood Pack is honored to— where are the unmated females?" Damien's voice cut through Thomas's greeting like a knife through silk. It was a voice that expected obedience, that had never had to ask twice. Thomas fumbled, gesturing toward where Claire stood with the other eligible women from various packs. 24 of them, all beautiful, all groomed to perfection, all desperate to catch the eye of the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms. Damien's gaze swept over them with the clinical detachment of a jeweler examining stones he'd already decided were worthless. One by one, the females straightened under his attention, some preening, others trembling. Claire held his stare for 3 full seconds before her eyes dropped. Longer than most, which was impressive, but still a submission. He looked away, already bored. "Is this all?" His question was directed at Beta Jackson, not the assembled alphas. "Yes, Your Majesty. 24 females from the eligible packs. All unmated. All of age. No." The single word dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. Jackson's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Your Majesty?" Damien's head tilted slightly, nostrils flaring. He was scenting something, I realized. Hunting something. His gaze moved past the cluster of presented females, swept across the crowd of observers, and our eyes met. The impact was physical. I actually felt it in my chest. A jolt that made my breath catch and my wolf surge upward in my mind with a force she'd never shown before. Those pale silver eyes locked onto mine, with the focused intensity of a hawk spotting a rabbit in tall grass. And I couldn't look away, couldn't move, couldn't think beyond the sudden irrational certainty that my entire life had been leading to this single moment. His expression didn't change, no warmth, no recognition, nothing human at all. But something in those frozen eyes shifted. There. His voice was quieter now, but it carried across the silent hall with perfect clarity. He raised one hand, pointing directly at me. "Bring that girl to me." The world tilted. Around me, I could feel the shock rippling through the crowd like a physical wave. Claire's sharp intake of breath. Alpha Thomas's confusion shifting rapidly to calculation. The other alphas whispering, already trying to understand the politics of this choice. The presented females, their carefully constructed hopes crumbling into ash and resentment. But all I could see were those silver eyes, pinning me in place like a butterfly to a board. Beta Jackson was already moving toward me, his expression carefully neutral. The crowd parted before him, creating a pathway that felt like a gauntlet. My legs didn't want to work. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to disappear the way I'd always disappeared when dominant wolves took notice. But Jackson had reached me, and his hand, surprisingly gentle, closed around my elbow. "Come on, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "It'll be all right. Just keep breathing." I wasn't sure if that was true, but I let him guide me forward anyway. My feet moved automatically, one in front of the other, carrying me across an expanse of marble floor that felt as wide as an ocean. The whispers followed me like a wake, sharp and cutting. "Who is she?" "From Silverwood? Really? Look at her dress. Clearly not first choice." "What does he see in her?" I kept my eyes down, counting my steps, trying to remember how to breathe. Jackson's hand remained steady on my elbow, an anchor in the chaos. We climbed 3 steps to the dais where Damien stood, and then Jackson was gently releasing me, stepping back, leaving me alone before the Alpha King. I forced myself to look up. He was even more imposing up close. The aura of power that had been merely oppressive from across the room was now suffocating, pressing down on my shoulders with almost physical weight. My wolf should have been cowering, whimpering, exposing her throat in submission. Instead, she was curious, watchful, alert in a way she'd never been before. Damien studied me with the same clinical detachment he'd shown the others. But there was something else there now, something that made my skin prickle with awareness. He circled me slowly, and I fought the urge to track his movement, keeping my eyes forward like I'd been taught. Submissive, unthreatening, invisible. He completed his circuit and stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I could smell him. Pine and smoke, and that same wild coldness that seemed to emanate from his very bones. Name. Not a question. A command. Elena. My voice came out steadier than I'd expected. Elena Wade, Your Majesty. Pack? Silverwood, Your Majesty. Rank? This was where it would end, I thought. This was where he'd realize his mistake and send me back to my column, back to invisibility. None, Your Majesty. I'm not ranked. Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. His hand moved, and I tensed. But he only reached up to touch a strand of my pale hair that had escaped its pins. He rubbed it between his fingers like he was testing the quality of fabric, his expression thoughtful. How old are you, Elena Wade? 26, Your Majesty, and you've never mated. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. No, Your Majesty. His eyes narrowed slightly. Why not? Because no one wanted me. Because I was broken. Because I was good at being invisible. Because every time a male showed interest, my wolf retreated so far into my mind that I couldn't even feel her. And what kind of mate was that? I swallowed hard. I never found the right match, Your Majesty. A lie, and we both knew it. But he didn't call me on it. Instead, he leaned closer, and I felt his breath against my ear as he inhaled deeply, scenting me. Every muscle in my body locked tight. This close, I could feel the heat of him, the barely leashed power that vibrated in the air between us. When he pulled back, his expression was unreadable, but his next word sent ice water through my veins. You'll stay in the palace. My staff will prepare appropriate quarters. He turned to Beta Jackson without waiting for my response. See that she's settled. I want her comfortable. Then he looked back at me, and for just a fraction of a second, I thought I saw something almost human in those frozen eyes. Something that might have been recognition, or loneliness, or hunger. We have much to discuss, Elena Wade. The quarters they gave me were larger than the entire house I'd grown up in. I stood in the center of the main room, still wearing Claire's borrowed dress, trying to process the reality of carved mahogany furniture, silk curtains the color of midnight, and a bed so massive it could have slept 5 people comfortably. Through tall windows, I could see the palace gardens stretching out in geometric perfection, moonlight turning the carefully trimmed hedges into silver monuments. It had been 4 hours since the banquet. 4 hours since those pale eyes had found me across a crowded room and changed everything. Beta Jackson had escorted me here personally, his manner professional, but not unkind. He'd explained that dinner would be brought to my room, that a maid would arrive in the morning to help me dress, that His Majesty would send for me when he was ready. Then he'd left me alone with my thoughts, and a silence so complete, it felt like being underwater. I'd tried the door once, unlocked, thankfully, though 2 guards stood in the hallway beyond, their expressions carefully blank. Not a prisoner then, just contained. A soft knock interrupted my spiral of anxiety. I turned as the door opened, and a young woman entered carrying a tray laden with covered dishes. She couldn't have been more than 20, with warm brown skin and dark curls pulled back in a practical bun. Her smile was genuine as she set the tray on a low table near the fireplace. Miss Elena? I'm Margot. I'll be looking after you during your stay. She began uncovering dishes, releasing the scent of roasted chicken, fresh bread, and something sweet I couldn't identify. His Majesty instructed that you be given anything you need. Are you settling in all right? The kindness in her voice nearly broke something in me. Yes. Thank you. This is all very... I gestured helplessly at the opulent room. Overwhelming? Margot's smile turned sympathetic. I imagine so. You're from Silverwood? Jackson said. I nodded, sinking into one of the chairs by the fireplace. The cushions were absurdly soft. I shouldn't be here. There's been some kind of mistake. Margot paused in her arrangement of the food, her expression thoughtful. His Majesty doesn't make mistakes. Not about things like this. She handed me a plate. Eat. You look like you're about to shatter. I accepted the plate mechanically, but the smell of food made my stomach turn. What does he want with me? I don't know, Margot admitted, settling into the chair across from me with the ease of someone comfortable in her position. But I can tell you that in the 3 years I've worked here, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you tonight. What do you mean? She considered her words carefully. The king. He's been empty since Queen Cassandra died. Going through the motions of ruling, making the right decisions. But it's like watching a ghost pilot a body. No warmth, no connection, no life beyond what's absolutely necessary. Her eyes met mine. Tonight, when he pointed at you, I saw something flicker, just for a moment. But it was there. I set down the untouched plate, my hands trembling. I don't understand why me. There were 24 other females there, all higher ranked. All more what? More polished? More ambitious? Margot shook her head. Maybe that's exactly why. Maybe he's tired of wolves who want him for his crown. The thought sent fresh anxiety spiraling through my chest. I don't want his crown. I don't want any of this. Then you're probably exactly what he needs. Before I could respond, another knock sounded. Margot rose to answer it, returning with a package wrapped in brown paper and string. This just arrived from the palace seamstress. Clothes for tomorrow. She set it on the bed, then moved toward the door. Try to eat something, Miss Elena, and get some rest. Tomorrow will be significant. After she left, I forced myself to consume a few bites of bread, then changed into the nightgown that had been laid out. Simple white cotton, soft against my skin. I should have climbed into that enormous bed, should have tried to sleep, but instead I found myself standing at the window, staring out at gardens I had no right to walk through. What had he seen? The question circled my mind like a vulture. I'd spent my entire life being invisible, unremarkable, easily forgotten. And yet somehow, in a room full of eligible, beautiful, powerful females, the Alpha King had looked past them all and chosen me. My wolf stirred in my mind, and I reached for her instinctively. She'd been so quiet for so long, retreating from dominance, from confrontation, from anything that might make us noticeable. But now she was awake, alert, her attention fixed on something I couldn't quite grasp. "What do you feel?" I asked her silently. Her response came not in words but in sensation, recognition, curiosity, and something that felt almost like relief. I didn't understand. I didn't understand any of this. Sleep, when it finally came, was restless and full of silver eyes. Morning arrived with harsh sunlight and Margot's cheerful knock. She entered with another woman, older, severe, with measuring eyes that catalogued every inch of me with professional efficiency. "This is Madame Laurent," Margot introduced. "She'll be fitting you for proper attire." The next 2 hours were a blur of fabrics and measurements, of being turned and pinned and critiqued. Madame Laurent spoke very little, but her hands were skilled as she draped me in various materials, her expression thoughtful. "The pale colors suit her," she finally announced. "Blues, silvers, soft grays. Nothing too bold. It would overwhelm her coloring." She stepped back, assessing. "And her hair should be left down, or only partially pinned." The severity of last night's style worked against her natural grace. I wanted to argue that I had no natural grace, but the seamstress's tone brooked no disagreement. By the time she finished, I'd been measured for what seemed like dozens of garments, most of which sounded far too formal for someone of my station. After she left, Margot helped me into one of the new dresses, a soft blue that reminded me of winter skies, with simple lines that somehow made me look less awkward than I felt. She arranged my hair in a loose braid over one shoulder, a few pale strands escaping to frame my face. "There," she said with satisfaction. "Much better. His Majesty has requested your presence for lunch in the private dining room." My stomach dropped. "When?" 20 minutes. I'll escort you." 20 minutes to prepare myself to face the most powerful wolf in 5 kingdoms. 20 minutes to figure out what to say, how to act, why I was here at all. It wasn't nearly enough time. The private dining room was nothing like the grand banquet hall, smaller, intimate, with windows overlooking a rose garden and a table set for 2. Damien stood by one of those windows, his back to the door, dressed in simpler clothes than last night, dark pants, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked almost human like this, almost approachable. Then he turned, and those silver eyes found mine, and the illusion shattered. "Elena." My name in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. "Sit." I obeyed, taking the chair across from him, hyper-aware of every movement. Staff appeared with covered dishes, serving us both before disappearing like ghosts. The food looked exquisite. Delicate pastries, fresh fruit, things I couldn't name. But I couldn't imagine eating any of it. Damien, I noticed, wasn't eating either. He was watching me with that same intense focus from last night, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "You're afraid," he observed. "Yes, Your Majesty." "Of me?" I considered lying, but something told me he'd know. "Yes." "Good." He leaned back in his chair. "Fear means you're smart. Do you know why you're here?" "No, Your Majesty." "Stop calling me that. When we're alone, you'll use my name." The command was casual, but absolute. Yes, Damien." His name felt strange in my mouth. Too intimate, too presumptuous, but something flickered in his expression. Approval, maybe. Better, or satisfaction. He picked up his wineglass, studying the dark red liquid. "Tell me about yourself, Elena Wade. The truth, not the polite version you'd give at court." Where did I even start? "There's not much to tell. I'm from Silverwood. My parents died when I was young. The pack raised me. I work in the kitchens, sometimes the gardens. I trailed off, unsure what he wanted to hear. "You're unranked," he said. "Why? I've never challenged for rank. I'm not strong enough." "Your wolf is weak?" The question stung, but I nodded. "She doesn't shift well. The transformation is incomplete, painful. The pack healers think the trauma from my parents' death damaged something fundamental." "Show me." I blinked. "What?" "Your wolf. Let me see her." Panic flared in my chest. "I can't. Not here, I'm not asking you to shift fully. Just let her surface. Let me see your eyes." It was the last thing I wanted to do. To show him my broken wolf, to prove how unworthy I was of whatever strange attention he'd fixed on me. But the command in his voice left no room for refusal. I closed my eyes and reached for her. She came more easily than expected. Rising through my consciousness like a silver fish through dark water, I felt my eyes change, felt the wolf looking out through them at the Alpha King. When I opened them again, Damien had gone very still. His own eyes had shifted too, fully wolf now, that pale silver glowing with an inner light. We stared at each other across the table. Predator and... what? Prey? No. My wolf didn't feel like prey. She felt calm, certain, like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. "Interesting," Damien murmured, his voice rougher now, touched with his wolf's presence. "Your wolf isn't weak, Elena. She's been hiding." "I don't understand. Neither do I. Not yet." He pulled his wolf back, and I followed suit, both of us returning to human eyes. "But I intend to find out. You'll stay here, in the palace. We'll have meals together. You'll tell me about your life, your pack, your thoughts, and in return, I'll tell you about mine." "Why?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Why me? I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer you." For the first time, something almost like a smile touched his lips. Bitter, sad, barely there. Maybe that's exactly why. Everyone who approaches me wants something. Power, status, alliance, children to cement their position. They see a crown, a throne, a means to an end. His eyes held mine. "When you look at me, what do you see?" The honest answer rose to my lips before I could think better of it. "Loneliness." The word hung between us like a living thing. Damien's expression didn't change, but I saw him absorb it, felt the impact of that single truth. "Yes," he said quietly. "Loneliness. 3 years of it, so thick I can barely remember what it felt like to be anything else." He set down his wineglass with deliberate care. "Last night, when I scented you across that room, something in me woke up. Something I thought had died with Cassandra. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears." "What did you scent?" "Possibility," he said. "The first possibility I've felt in 3 years that maybe, just maybe, I could feel something again beyond duty and emptiness." He stood, moving around the table until he was standing beside my chair, looking down at me. "I don't know what you are to me yet, Elena Wade, but I know you're something, and I haven't been able to say that about anyone since the fire." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and touched my cheek with careful fingers. His hand was warm, calloused, gentle in a way that contradicted everything about his reputation. "Stay," he said softly. "Help me figure this out, please." The please undid me. This powerful king, This dominant alpha who could command anything he wanted was asking, not ordering. Asking. Okay, I whispered. I'll stay. His hand lingered on my cheek for another heartbeat, then withdrew. Good, finish your lunch. This afternoon I'll show you the gardens. Tomorrow we'll ride. I want to see how you move, how you think, who you are when you're not terrified. I'm not sure that version of me exists, I admitted. Then we'll find her together. The gardens were a masterpiece of controlled wilderness, paths winding through carefully cultivated roses, ancient oaks standing sentinel over moss-covered benches, fountains that sang with the music of falling water. Damien walked beside me in silence, his hands clasped behind his back, his presence a constant weight against my awareness. I'd expected guards, attendants, the usual entourage that followed royalty. Instead, it was just us, and the late afternoon sun filtering through leaves overhead, casting dappled patterns across the gravel path. Cassandra designed these, he said suddenly, his voice rough with disuse. She had a gift for making things grow. Could spend hours out here, covered in dirt, happier than she ever was at court functions. It was the first time he'd mentioned his dead mate voluntarily. I glanced at him, saw the tension in his jaw, the carefully controlled grief in his eyes. They're beautiful, I said softly. She had exquisite taste. She had a good heart. He stopped beside a rose bush heavy with white blooms, touching one of the petals with surprising gentleness. She saw the best in everyone, believed in redemption and second chances. I was harder then, more brutal. She softened me, made me better than I had any right to be. The pain in his words was so raw it hurt to hear. You loved her very much. I did. He released the petal, turning to face me fully. Which is why I need you to understand something, Elena. Whatever this is between us, whatever drew me to you across that room, it's not about replacing her. She can't be replaced. I don't want to replace her. Then what do you want from me? He considered the question, his silver eyes searching mine. I want to feel something again. Anything. Even if it's just curiosity or confusion or whatever this strange pull is when you're near. I've been numb for so long that even discomfort would be welcome. He paused. Does that make sense? Yes, I whispered. Because it did. Because I'd spent my whole life numb too. Just in a different way. Invisible, disconnected. Going through the motions of existing without ever really living. We walked further into the gardens. And slowly, carefully, he began to talk. About Cassandra. About their life together. About the fire that had taken her. His voice remained level, controlled, but I could hear the fractures underneath. Grief that had calcified into something hard and cold because he'd never allowed himself to truly feel it. The council wants me to remarry, he said as we paused beside a fountain shaped like a leaping wolf. They've been pressuring me for 2 years. Political alliances, heirs, stability for the kingdom. All very practical reasons. His laugh was bitter. That's why I agreed to the gathering. Not because I wanted a mate, but because I needed them to stop. I thought I'd go through the motions, reject everyone, buy myself another year or 2 of silence. But then you saw me. But then I saw you. He turned to me, and the intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. You were hiding behind a column, looking like you wanted to disappear into the marble. Your wolf's scent was so muted I almost missed it. But then our eyes met, and something in me just knew. Knew what? That you were hiding too, from different things, for different reasons. But hiding nonetheless, and I thought... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. I thought maybe 2 broken things could figure out how to exist in the same space without shattering each other completely. The honesty of it stole my voice. No pretty words, no romantic declarations, just brutal truth laid bare between us. I don't know how to be what you need, I finally managed. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. Small, quiet, invisible. Good, he said firmly. Because I don't need another performance. I've had 3 years of people performing around me, tiptoeing through their interactions, treating me like I might explode at any moment. I need... He exhaled slowly. I need real. Even if real is messy and confused and doesn't make sense. A breeze rustled through the garden, carrying the scent of roses and earth, and something wild that made my wolf stir with interest. Damien noticed the change immediately, his head tilting slightly. She's more active around me, he observed. Your wolf. Why? I don't know. She's usually so quiet, so withdrawn. But with you, she's curious. May I try something? The question made me nervous, but I nodded. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, and slowly extended his hand. Give me your hand. I placed my palm in his, and his fingers closed around it, warm, steady, strong. The contact sent electricity racing up my arm, and my wolf surged forward with sudden intensity, pressing against my consciousness like she wanted out. Damien's eyes widened slightly. You feel that? Yes. What is it? I don't know. His thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand, and I could see his wolf rising in his own eyes, drawn forward by whatever was happening between us. But it's not rejection. She's not afraid of me. Should she be? A ghost of a smile. Most wolves are. My dominance tends to make submissive wolves cower. He paused. But your wolf isn't submissive, is she? She's something else entirely. Before I could process that statement, footsteps crunched on the gravel path. Beta Jackson appeared around a hedge, his expression apologetic but urgent. Your Majesty, forgive the interruption. The Council has called an emergency session. There's been an incident at the southern border. Damien's entire demeanor shifted in an instant, the gentle male from moments before disappearing behind the mask of the Alpha King. His hand released mine, and the loss of contact felt like cold water. What kind of incident? Rogues. A large group. Organized. They hit 3 settlements before our forces could respond. Jackson's eyes flicked to me briefly before returning to his king. There are casualties. Damien's jaw tightened. How many? 17 dead. 23 injured. The rogues retreated before we could capture any for questioning. I watched Damien process this information, saw the weight of it settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. This was what it meant to be king. Every death a personal failure, every attack a wound that couldn't be allowed to show. Assemble the council, he said curtly. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Jackson nodded and disappeared back down the path. Damien turned to me, and I could see him already retreating, already pulling back into the cold efficiency that had kept him functional for 3 years. I'm sorry. I have to. Go, I said quickly. It's all right. Your people need you. Something flickered in his eyes, gratitude, maybe, or surprise that I understood without needing explanation. He reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture that was becoming familiar. Tonight. Have dinner with me tonight, in my private chambers. We'll continue this conversation. Then he was gone, striding down the path with the deadly grace of a predator heading into battle, and I was left alone in Cassandra's garden, my hand still tingling from his touch. The evening found me back in my quarters, pacing like a caged animal. Margot had brought another dress, deep silver this time, simple but elegant, and helped me prepare for dinner with the king. Her hands were gentle as she arranged my hair, her manner cheerful despite the tension that had settled over the palace since news of the attack had spread. The whole court's in an uproar, she confided as she worked. Some are saying it's the Northland's pack, trying to test His Majesty's defenses. Others think it's the exiled Blackthorn wolves finally making their move. She secured a final pin. What do you think? I think I don't know enough about pack politics to have an opinion, I admitted. Margot smiled at my reflection in the mirror. Honest. I like that about you. She stepped back, assessing her work. There. You look lovely. Try not to be too nervous. He may be king, but he's still just a man. A very powerful, occasionally terrifying man, but still. Her attempt at humor helped, but my stomach was still tight with anxiety when guards escorted me through the palace corridors to the royal wing. The private chambers were behind reinforced doors, guarded by 4 wolves whose dominance made my skin prickle. They nodded at my approach, clearly expecting me, and opened the doors. Damien's personal space was surprisingly sparse. I'd expected opulence, but found instead clean lines, dark woods, and minimal decoration. A large desk dominated one corner, buried under maps and reports. Bookshelves lined 2 walls, packed with leather-bound volumes. The dining area was set near a fireplace, the table already laid with covered dishes. Damien stood by the fire, still in his formal council clothes, his posture rigid with tension. He didn't turn when I entered, just spoke to the flames. 17 families are grieving tonight because I didn't anticipate this attack. Because I was too focused on, he stopped himself, jaw clenching. I understood what he wasn't saying, too focused on me, on his own needs instead of his kingdom's security. You can't predict everything, I said quietly, moving closer. You're not omniscient. I'm supposed to protect them. That's the entire purpose of my existence, to stand between my people and anything that would harm them. He finally turned, and the anguish in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. And I failed. You're one wolf. You can't be everywhere at once. I'm not one wolf. I'm the Alpha King. I have resources, intelligence networks, military forces specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of attack. His hands clenched into fists, and yet, here we are. I wanted to comfort him, but I didn't know how. Didn't know if I had the right, if he'd even accept it from me, so instead, I just stood there, present, offering the only thing I could, my attention, without judgment. He seemed to notice, his posture softening slightly. I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted tonight to go. It's all right. You're processing. I'm spiraling. He moved to the table, pouring 2 glasses of wine with hands that weren't quite steady. The council wants immediate retaliation. Commander Sarah's already planning strike operations. But we don't even know who's responsible yet, and I refuse to attack blindly. He handed me a glass, though half the council thinks that's weakness talking, not strategy. I accepted the wine, our fingers brushing. What do you think it is? I think I'm tired of violence being the first answer to everything. He sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. I've been fighting my entire life, Elena. Border wars, succession challenges, rogue attacks, political maneuvering. I'm so fucking tired of it. The profanity startled me, the first crack in his careful composure. I sat across from him, setting down my untouched wine. Then why keep doing it? Because stopping means people die. Because the moment I show weakness, every ambitious alpha in 5 kingdoms will see an opening. Because this is what I was born to do, whether I want it or not. His silver eyes met mine. Do you know what it's like? Having every single decision you make affect thousands of lives? Never being able to just be? No, I admitted, but I know what it's like to have no decisions at all. To be so powerless that you disappear into the background of your own life. I paused. I'm not sure which is worse. He considered that, really considered it. At least you have the freedom to be invisible. Every eye in the kingdom is on me, waiting for me to slip, to fail, to prove I'm not worthy of this position. And you think that's freedom? Being so insignificant that nobody cares if you exist? The words came out sharper than intended, years of suppressed frustration bleeding through. I'd take the pressure of mattering over the emptiness of obscurity any day. Silence stretched between us, charged with tension. Then, unexpectedly, Damien laughed. A real laugh. Rough from disuse, but genuine. We're quite the pair, aren't we? The king who wants to disappear, and the invisible woman who wants to matter. The absurdity of it struck me, and I felt my own lips curving. It's ridiculous. Completely. His expression softened. But maybe that's why this works. We each have what the other needs. You have freedom, I have purpose. Perhaps we can teach each other. What would you teach me? How to be seen. How to take up space without apologizing for it. How to believe you have value beyond utility. His eyes held mine. What would you teach me? I thought about it carefully. How to be still. How to exist without the weight of a kingdom on your shoulders. I hesitated, then pushed forward. How to grieve without drowning in it. His expression shuddered slightly at that last part, but he didn't pull away. You think I haven't grieved? I think you've turned grief into ice because feeling it fully would break you. And you can't afford to break because too many people depend on you. I leaned forward. But ice doesn't heal, Damien. It just preserves the wound. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, slowly, he reached across the table and took my hand again. This time, his grip was tight, almost desperate. Stay, he said again, like he had at lunch. But this time the word carried different weight. Not a request for company, but a plea for something deeper. An anchor. A witness to his humanity. I'm here, I promised. I'm not going anywhere. 3 weeks passed in a blur of slowly shifting routines. Every morning, Damien would send for me after his council meetings. We'd breakfast together in the gardens when weather permitted, or in his study when it didn't. He'd tell me about kingdom business, border disputes, trade negotiations, pack politics, and I'd listen, occasionally offering observations that seemed to surprise him with their insight. In the afternoons, he'd teach me to ride the massive horses from the royal stables, his hands steadying me when I lost balance, his patience endless as I learned. Evenings were for dinner and conversation. He'd ask about my past, and slowly, painfully, I'd excavate memories I'd buried for years. The root cellar, the screaming, the 2 months of silence afterward. He never pushed, never demanded more than I could give, but his attention was absolute. Like every word I spoke mattered more than treaties or battle plans. And at night, alone in my too large bed, I'd lie awake trying to understand what was happening between us. It wasn't romance, not in any traditional sense. Damien never touched me beyond those careful hand-holdings, never looked at me with obvious desire. But there was an intimacy growing between us that felt more profound than physical attraction, a recognition of shared wounds, a tentative trust being built word by careful word. The court naturally had opinions. I'd catch whispers in hallways, see the way other wolves watched me with calculation or resentment. Claire had left after the first week, her departure arranged by Alpha Thomas with barely concealed disappointment that I'd failed to secure any formal position. The eligible females from other packs had scattered back to their territories, spreading rumors about the Mad King and his strange fixation on a nobody from Silverwood. Only Margot, Beta Jackson, and Commander Sarah treated me with genuine warmth. Sarah especially had become an unexpected ally, her blunt manner a refreshing contrast to court politics. "Ignore the gossip," she told me one afternoon as she taught me basic self-defense in the training yard. "They're just bitter that you have his attention without even trying. That's what really galls them. You're not playing their games." But on the morning of the 4th week, everything changed. I was in the library, a massive room that had become my sanctuary, when urgent footsteps echoed in the hallway. Beta Jackson burst through the doors, his usually composed face tight with worry. "Elena, come with me. Now." The command in his voice pulled me to my feet instantly. "What's happened?" "The King's Wolf has taken control. He's in the old training grounds and he's..." Jackson's jaw clenched. "He's not responding to commands. Sarah's trying to contain the situation, but we need you." "Me? Why would you need me?" "Because you're the only one he's shown any connection to in 3 years. Because when we mentioned your name, his wolf's aggression decreased." Jackson was already pulling me toward the door. "Please, Elena. He could hurt someone. Or worse, hurt himself trying to regain control." We ran through corridors, guards scattering before us, until we reached the old training grounds, an outdoor arena surrounded by high stone walls. I could hear the snarling before we entered, a sound so primal it made every instinct scream at me to run. Sarah stood just inside the entrance, her stance defensive, blocking the way. Beyond her, in the center of the arena, was the largest wolf I'd ever seen. Damien's wolf form was terrifying, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light, and those same silver eyes now glowing with barely controlled fury. He paced in tight circles, lips pulled back to reveal fangs designed to tear through flesh and bone. Blood stained his muzzle, though I couldn't tell if it was his own or someone else's. "What triggered this?" I whispered. Sarah's voice was tight. "News from the border. The rogues hit another settlement. This time they left a message. They're specifically targeting Damien's rule, trying to provoke him into making mistakes." Her eyes remained fixed on the massive wolf. "He's been holding everything in for so long. This just broke something loose." Jackson touched my shoulder gently. "We think his wolf is trying to process everything he won't let himself feel as a man. Rage, grief, frustration. It's all coming out at once." Damien's wolf snarled again, the sound reverberating off the stone walls. He turned his massive head toward us, and I felt the weight of that predatory stare like a physical blow. "Elena," Sarah said carefully, "I need you to walk out there, slowly. Let him scent you. Maybe..." "That's insane," Jackson interrupted. "His wolf could kill her in seconds." "He won't." Sarah's conviction was absolute. "I've watched them together these past weeks. His wolf is calmer around her. If anyone can reach him, it's her." Every rational thought I possessed screamed that this was suicide. That dominant wolf in full fury, unable to recognize friend from foe, was the most dangerous thing in existence. But my own wolf was surging forward with unexpected strength, utterly unafraid, almost eager. "All right," I heard myself say. "I'll try." Jackson cursed under his breath, but didn't stop me as I stepped past Sarah into the arena. The massive wolf's attention locked onto me immediately, his snarling intensifying. I could see the muscles bunching under that dark fur, could practically feel the violence coiled in his frame ready to explode. I took another step forward, hands visible, posture non-threatening. "Damien," I said softly, "I know you're in there. I know you're scared of what you're feeling." The wolf's ears flattened against his skull. Another step. "You told me once that you'd been numb for 3 years, that you'd forgotten what it felt like to feel anything." My voice remained steady despite my racing heart. "This is feeling, Damien, all of it. The rage, the helplessness, the grief you've been keeping frozen inside." He crouched lower, a warning growl rumbling through his chest. But he hadn't attacked yet, hadn't charged. "I know it's overwhelming. I know it hurts." Another step. I was maybe 15 feet away now, close enough to see the intelligence warring with instinct in those silver eyes. "But you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to carry everything by yourself." His wolf shook his massive head, like trying to clear confusion. The snarling quieted slightly. "I'm right here," I whispered. "I'm not afraid of you. Not the king, not the wolf, not the broken parts you think you need to hide 10 feet. My wolf was fully present now, looking out through my eyes, adding her scent to my words. And something extraordinary happened. My wolf pushed forward harder than she ever had before, and I felt my own eyes shift, felt her rise to the surface with a confidence I'd never experienced. Damien's wolf went completely still. I let my wolf stay visible, let her meet his gaze with calm certainty. And slowly, so slowly, I took the final steps that brought me within touching distance of a creature that could end my life with a single movement. "There you are," I breathed. His massive head tilted, studying me with laser focus. Then, carefully, deliberately, he took one step forward and pressed his blood-stained muzzle against my stomach. The contact sent shockwaves through both of us. I felt his wolf's anguish like it was my own. Years of suppressed emotion, of forced control, of trying to be strong enough for everyone while slowly dying inside. My hands moved of their own accord, sinking into the thick fur at his neck, holding him steady. "I know," I whispered. "I know it hurts. But you're not alone anymore." A sound escaped him, not a growl, but something closer to a whimper. His entire massive frame shuddered, and I felt him fighting for control, fighting to pull himself back from the edge. "Come back to me, Damien. Come back." For a heartbeat, nothing changed. Then I felt the shift beginning, bones cracking, muscles reforming, fur receding. The transformation was agonizing to witness, but I didn't look away, didn't release my hold on him. When it was over, Damien knelt naked on the ground, his head still pressed against my stomach, his arms wrapped around my waist with desperate strength. His entire body shook with tremors he couldn't control. "I'm sorry," he gasped. "God, Elena, I'm so sorry. I could have killed you. I could have—" "Shh, you didn't. You won't." My fingers moved through his hair, offering what comfort I could. "You're all right. We're all right." Behind us, I heard Sarah barking orders, sending guards away, giving us privacy. Someone threw a cloak over Damien's shoulders, but he didn't move, didn't release his grip on me. "I felt everything," he whispered against my dress. "Every death, every failure, every moment I should have been strong enough to prevent. 3 years of it, all at once. I thought I was going to drown in it, but you didn't. You came back. Because of you." He finally lifted his head, and his eyes were red-rimmed, devastated. "Your voice, your scent. My wolf knew you, trusted you when he couldn't trust anything else." His hand came up to cup my face, his touch reverent. "What are you to me, Elena? What is this?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I think maybe we're each other's anchor. The thing that keeps us from drifting too far into the darkness." He pulled me down until I was kneeling with him, our foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air. "Stay with me," he said again. But this time, the words carried different meaning, Not a request for company or conversation, but something deeper. A plea for permanence, for partnership, for someone to witness all the broken pieces and choose to stay anyway. "I'm here," I promised. "For as long as you need me." His arms tightened around me, and we stayed like that. Two damaged souls clinging to each other in the center of an arena built for violence, finding something like peace in the midst of chaos. The incident changed things between us. Damien no longer maintained careful distance. He'd reach for my hand in council meetings, his fingers interlacing with mine like a lifeline. He'd seek me out when stress threatened to overwhelm him, would sit beside me in the library while I read aloud, letting my voice soothe the constant tension that vibrated through his frame. And slowly, carefully, he began to actually grieve. One evening, 2 days after the arena, he led me to a private chapel in the palace's oldest wing. Portraits lined the walls, previous kings and queens, ancestors stretching back centuries. At the end was a painting of a woman with warm brown eyes and a gentle smile. "Cassandra," he said quietly, "I haven't been here since the funeral." We stood before her portrait, and I watched emotions play across his face. Love, loss, guilt, regret. His hand found mine, gripping tight. "I think I've been afraid that if I truly let her go, I'd lose the last pieces of the man I was when she was alive. The better man she made me." His voice cracked. "But holding on to her memory like armor just made me hollow. I see that now." "She wouldn't want you to stop living," I said softly. "No. She'd probably be furious with me for wasting 3 years. A sad smile touched his lips. "She'd like you, I think. You have the same quiet strength she did. The same ability to see through pretense to what's real underneath. I wish I could have met her. I wish you could have too." He turned to me then, his silver eyes searching mine. "But I need you to understand, what I feel for you, it's not the same as what I felt for her. It's not meant to be. She was my past, my first love, the foundation that shaped me, but you—" He hesitated, searching for words. "You're something different, something I didn't know I needed until you were there." My heart pounded against my ribs. "What am I?" "My present, my anchor, the person who saw me at my absolute worst and chose to walk toward me instead of running away." His free hand came up to cut my cheek. "I don't know what the future holds, Elena. I don't know if what's growing between us will become something more, or if we're meant to just be this, two broken people helping each other heal. But I know I want you in my life. In whatever capacity you'll allow." The honesty in his words was devastating. No grand declarations, no promises of forever, just raw truth offered without pretense. "I want that too," I whispered. "Whatever this is, wherever it goes, I want to figure it out together." He leaned down slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, and pressed his forehead against mine. We stood like that for a long time, breathing together, while Cassandra's painted eyes watched with what I hoped was approval. When we finally left the chapel, something fundamental had shifted. The grief was still there. It would always be there, but it no longer consumed everything else. There was room now for other things, for possibility, for us. 6 weeks after the gathering, the rogue situation came to a head. Commander Sarah's intelligence network had finally identified the leader, a wolf named Victor Morse, formerly of the Northlands Pack, exiled 5 years ago for attempting to overthrow his alpha. He'd been building an army of outcasts and dissidents, spreading propaganda that Damien's rule had grown weak, that the Alpha King cared more about his own grief than protecting his people. The council demanded immediate action. Damien, for the first time since I'd known him, looked uncertain. "A full military response will cost lives on both sides," he said during the emergency session I'd been invited to attend. My presence at council meetings had become accepted, if not entirely welcomed. But ignoring this threat will embolden every rogue pack in the region. "We don't negotiate with exiles," one of the older alphas growled. "Show strength, Your Majesty. Remind them why you're king." But Damien's eyes found mine across the council chamber, and I saw the question there. The old Damien would have ordered an attack without hesitation, but the man who'd broken down in my arms, who'd learned to grieve instead of freezing his emotions, was considering other options. "What if we offered terms?" I heard myself say. The room went silent. Several council members turned to stare at me with expressions ranging from shock to outrage. I'd never spoken during a session before, had been content to observe and learn. Explain, Damien said, his voice carefully neutral. I stood, forcing myself to meet the hostile gazes around the table. Victor Morse wants recognition. He wants to matter, to be seen as powerful. What if instead of giving him a war, which would make him a martyr regardless of outcome, we offer him something else? Like what? Sarah asked, her tone genuinely curious rather than dismissive. A challenge. Single combat with the Alpha King, witnessed by all packs. If Victor wins, he gets a formal hearing for his grievances before the full council. If Damien wins, Victor's followers disband and submit to royal authority. I looked directly at Damien. It removes the innocent from the equation. Makes this about what it's really about. Two dominants fighting for legitimacy. The room exploded in argument. Half the council thought it was brilliant strategy. The other half thought it was suicide. But Damien sat back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. You, he said, pointing at me, are far more devious than you look. Is that a compliment? The highest. He stood, and the council fell silent. We'll send Victor the challenge. Make it formal, public, impossible to refuse without looking weak. The combat will take place in 1 week, neutral ground, all packs invited to witness. Your Majesty, one of the elder alphas protested, what if you lose? Damien's smile turned sharp, dangerous. I won't. The week before the challenge was chaos. Damien trained obsessively, pushing his body to its limits in the practice yards. I watched from the sidelines, my heart in my throat every time he took a hit, every time his opponent landed a strike, but he was magnificent, all-controlled power and lethal grace, a predator in his absolute prime. At night, he'd come to my quarters, exhausted and bruised, and we'd sit by the fire while I read to him, or we simply existed in comfortable silence. The physical distance between us had been slowly closing, casual touches becoming more frequent, his arm around my shoulders, my head resting against his chest. We'd never kissed, never discussed what we were to each other beyond anchors and allies. But the connection between us had deepened into something undeniable, something that made my wolf sing with contentment whenever he was near. 3 nights before the challenge, he arrived at my door later than usual, tension radiating from every line of his body. Can't sleep, he admitted when I let him in. Keep running scenarios, looking for weaknesses Victor might exploit. You're going to win, I said with absolute certainty. How can you be so sure? Because you have something to fight for now. Something beyond duty or obligation. I took his hand, pulling him toward the couch by the fireplace. You have reasons to come home. He sank down beside me, his arm automatically coming around my shoulders. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I just see you clearly. I tilted my head to look up at him. You're not the frozen king anymore, Damien. You're not numb. You're alive again, and that makes you dangerous in ways Victor can't anticipate. His hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with infinite gentleness. You did that. You brought me back. We brought each other back. The air between us shifted, charged with something that had been building for weeks. His eyes dropped to my lips, then back up, asking a silent question. My heart hammered against my ribs as I gave the smallest nod. He leaned in slowly, so slowly, giving me every chance to change my mind. When his lips finally met mine, it was soft, careful, reverent, like I was something precious that might break. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. There was no desperation, no consuming passion, just profound tenderness and the sense of something clicking into place. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard. Elena, he whispered, I need you to know. Don't. I pressed my fingers to his lips. Don't make promises before the fight. Just come back to me. We'll figure out the rest after. His arms tightened around me, and we stayed tangled together on the couch until dawn painted the sky pink, neither of us willing to let go. The challenge took place in an ancient stone amphitheater on neutral ground between territories. Thousands of wolves had gathered to witness. Alphas and their packs, council members, curious onlookers who'd traveled days just to see the spectacle. The air vibrated with tension and barely contained aggression. I sat in the royal box between Beta Jackson and Commander Sarah, my hands clenched so tight my nails drew blood from my palms. Below, in the center of the arena, Damien stood in human form, stripped to the waist, his powerful frame scarred from countless battles. Across from him, Victor Morse was equally impressive, taller, broader, younger by perhaps 5 years. His smile was all confidence as he surveyed the crowd. "The terms are accepted," the neutral mediator announced. "Single combat, wolf form, until one submits or cannot continue." The victor's word becomes law for both parties. Both males shifted simultaneously, bones cracking, muscles reforming, until 2 massive wolves faced each other across blood-stained stone. Victor was larger, his russet fur bristling with aggression. But Damien moved with the deadly certainty of a wolf who'd never lost a dominance fight in his life. They circled each other, testing, waiting for an opening. Then Victor lunged. The fight was brutal and terrifyingly fast. Victor fought with raw power, using his size advantage to try to overwhelm Damien with sheer force. But Damien fought like water, flowing around attacks, finding weaknesses, turning Victor's momentum against him. Blood stained the arena floor. I couldn't tell whose. Victor's jaws closed on Damien's shoulder, and I half rose from my seat before Sarah's hand pulled me back down. But Damien twisted impossibly fast, using the hold to flip Victor onto his back, his own fangs finding Victor's throat. One bite. That's all it would take. One bite, and Victor would be dead, the threat eliminated permanently. The crowd held its collective breath. But Damien didn't bite down. Instead, he held Victor pinned, teeth at his throat, waiting, giving him the choice to submit or die. For a long moment, Victor struggled. Then slowly, his body went limp in surrender, throat exposed in the ultimate gesture of submission. Damien released him and stepped back, shifting to human form despite his injuries. Blood ran down his shoulder and side, but he stood straight, addressing the crowd with a voice that carried across the amphitheater. Victor Morse challenged my rule because he felt unheard, because he believed strength was the only language power understood. Damien's silver eyes swept across the assembled wolves, but true strength isn't just in domination. It's in knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. Victor, you have your hearing. Come to the capital in 1 week. Present your grievances before the full council. If they have merit, we'll address them. If not, you and your followers will submit to royal authority as agreed. The crowd erupted, some in approval, others in shock that he'd shown such clemency. But Victor, still in wolf form, slowly shifted back to human, his expression stunned. "You're giving me what I wanted? I'm giving you what you needed, to be seen, to be heard, to matter." Damien extended his hand. "What you do with that opportunity is up to you." After a long hesitation, Victor clasped his hand. The crowd roared its approval, and I felt tears streaming down my face without shame. He'd won. Not just the fight, but something far more important. He'd proven that the Frozen King was truly gone, replaced by someone capable of both strength and compassion. The healing took 3 days. Damien's shoulder required stitches, his ribs were bruised, and he'd torn muscles that would need weeks to fully recover. But he bore it all with surprising patience, letting the healers work while I sat beside his bed, reading aloud from books he'd loved as a child. On the 4th day, he was finally cleared to leave the medical wing. Instead of returning to his chambers, he asked me to walk with him to the gardens, to Cassandra's gardens. The roses were in full bloom, their scent heavy on the evening air. We walked in comfortable silence until we reached the fountain with the leaping wolf, the place where we'd first really talked about his grief. "I made a decision," Damien said quietly, "about us, about the future." My heart stuttered. What kind of decision? He turned to face me, taking both my hands in his. "The council wants me to choose a queen. They've been patient these past weeks, but after the challenge, the pressure's going to intensify. They'll push for political alliances, strategic marriages, all the usual games." "I know." My voice came out smaller than intended. This was it, I thought. The moment where reality intruded on whatever we'd been building. He'd marry someone suitable, and I'd return to being invisible. "I'm going to tell them I've already chosen." I blinked. "What?" "You, Elena, if you'll have me." His hands tightened on mine, not because I need an alliance, or because the council demands it, or because it's politically expedient, but because in 6 weeks, you've shown me more of who I want to be than anyone else in my entire life. Because you walked toward my wolf when he was at his most dangerous and anchored me back to humanity. Because when I think about the future, I can't imagine it without you in it. Damien, I'm nobody. I have no rank, no political value, no... You're everything, he interrupted fiercely. You're brave and wise and kind. You see through all the bullshit to what actually matters. You made me feel again, made me want to be better instead of just functional. His eyes held mine. I'm not asking you to be a political queen. I'm asking you to be my partner, my anchor, my reason to keep fighting for a kingdom worth ruling. Tears blurred my vision. The council will never accept. I don't care what the council accepts. I care what you want. His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand. So tell me, Elena Wade from Silverwood, do you want this? Do you want me? The answer had been growing in my heart for weeks. Maybe from that very first moment when our eyes met across a crowded room. Yes, I whispered. God, yes. He pulled me into his arms, and this kiss was different from the first. Deeper, more certain, full of promise and hope, and the understanding that we were choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathless and smiling. The court is going to lose their minds, I said. Let them. He grinned, looking younger and lighter than I'd ever seen him. We'll face them together. The official announcement came 1 week later, after Victor's hearing had concluded peacefully, and his followers had agreed to disband. Damien stood before the assembled court, me at his side, and declared his intention to take me as his queen. The reaction was predictable chaos. Some alphas were outraged, others calculating, a few genuinely pleased, but Damien faced them all with calm authority, making it clear this wasn't up for debate or negotiation. Elena Wade has proven herself in the ways that matter most, he stated. She has courage, wisdom, and a good heart. Those who doubt her will learn, as I did, that strength comes in many forms, and those who cannot accept my choice are free to leave this court. No one left. In the weeks that followed, I learned to navigate court politics with Sarah's ruthless coaching and Jackson's patient guidance. I discovered that the invisible skills I'd honed in Silverwood, reading people, understanding unspoken dynamics, knowing when to speak and when to listen, translated surprisingly well to managing nobles and settling disputes. Margot became my official lady-in-waiting, her cheerful efficiency keeping me grounded when protocol threatened to overwhelm. Claire even returned to offer grudging congratulations, her envy obvious but her manners impeccable. And through it all, Damien was there, my partner, my anchor, my home. The wedding took place 3 months after the gathering, in the same gardens Cassandra had designed. It felt right somehow to start our future in a place that honored his past. The ceremony was both grand and intimate, attended by wolves from all territories but centered on the two of us, and the vows we spoke with absolute certainty. When Damien kissed me as the sun set behind us, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I felt my wolf settle in my chest with complete contentment. I was no longer invisible, no longer broken, no longer just making up numbers. I was seen. I was chosen. I was home. Years later, when young wolves would ask how a nobody from Silverwood became queen, I'd tell them the truth. That sometimes the most powerful connections happen not despite our wounds, but because of them. That two broken people can build something stronger together than either could have managed alone. And that the Alpha King hadn't touched anyone in 3 years, until he saw a girl hiding behind a column and recognized in her the same loneliness that had been consuming him. Until he took a chance on healing instead of staying frozen. Until he learned that sometimes the greatest strength is in choosing to feel again. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated, full of hard conversations and difficult growth. But it was real. It was ours. And in a world of political marriages and strategic alliances, that realness was its own kind of magic. Damien and I ruled together for decades, building a kingdom where strength meant both protection and compassion, where broken wolves could find healing, where no one had to hide to survive. We had children who inherited his silver eyes and my pale hair, who grew up understanding that power without heart was just tyranny dressed in noble clothes. And every year, on the anniversary of the gathering, we'd return to Cassandra's gardens and sit by the fountain with the leaping wolf, remembering the night everything changed. Remembering that sometimes, being seen by the right person at the right moment is all it takes to transform two lonely souls into something extraordinary. The Alpha King had chosen the invisible girl, and together, we became legendary.